This is Radio TV Phono Nut, and here we have a Motorola 5-tube AM radio from, I believe, 1961. It's one that's been here a while, and I dug it out of my stash. And it's in pretty good shape. I need to clean it up a bit, but the Motorola badge that was here on the cabinet under the dial, it's long since fallen off. I'm going to try to clean the glue up that held it on, and at least it'll look a little better. The radio plays, but on original parts, but I'm giving this to a friend who's been sending me talking book records for the past, several years now. Well, anyway, he'd sent me a 5-tube Philco radio for repair, and unfortunately, that one has seen better days, and it's just been around the block too many times, and I think he just wants a little 5-tube radio, so this one's in better shape, so I think I'm going to fix it up for him. I'm going to go ahead and change the filter capacitor, even though the one that's in there is perfectly good, and change any other capacitor or anything else that looks like it could cause trouble, because when I send this to him, I want it to be right. I don't want it to give him any problems anytime soon, and if I don't fix this up, it'll be just my luck that the day after he gets it, something will crap out in it, and then he'll have to send it back to me, and even though I don't mind working on it again, I just don't want to put him through the inconvenience. About 30 years ago, I bought the two-tone blue version of this at a monthly sale that we had here in town called the Collector's Fair. I think I paid $15 for it and got rid of it. Now I wished I'd have kept it, but that's the way it goes. Here's the inside of the radio, and unlike most cheaper 5-tube AC/DC radios, this one here has a 5-inch speaker where most of them use a 4-inch speaker. And I've always liked these Motorola Golden Voice speakers. It's something back then, even the internal parts of these things have personality, even though most people are never going to see the inside of their radio or TV, but even the old parts have personality to them, which is something the Chinese junker things today don't have. Alright, let's get this apart. I want to do a little PM on the chassis and clean the cabinet up, put it back together, and it'll be on the road to him. And one of the things about this set that's not so great is this particular radio uses the infamous Motorola double-sided printed circuit board that they introduced in the 1950s and continued to use up until at least the mid-60s. And what that means is there's actually connections on both sides of the circuit board. They can be a pain in the butt to deal with, and most service technicians back then didn't think too highly of them. So all of you who think that double-sided printed circuit boards didn't come along until the 1980s microchip integrated circuit computer Knight Rider era, then you would be sadly mistaken. They were around well back into the tube era, so it's nothing new. Alright, I just wanted to show you that. Now let me get to work with checking things and replacing things and trying to get this set to work as good as possible. Well, with the aid of Chemtronic's 10-25L desoldering braid and a solder sucker and some very gentle prying with a screwdriver while heating up the connections, we were able to get this out without breaking anything. It's your standard 50 microfarad, 30 microfarad, 150 volt capacitor, so that won't be any problem to change. And amazingly enough, we didn't tear any traces off of the circuit board, but we're not finished yet. So before I replace the capacitor, I want to take some alcohol and clean this green corrosive crap off that likely leaked out of the power cord. That seems to be a problem with some of these old power cord, cheater type power cords, is there's some kind of reaction between the insulation and the copper wire, and it produces some kind of green corrosive crap. It happened a lot with RCA cords. Here are the two caps installed, and you want to make sure you use enough solder on the underside of the board that it flows through and sticks to the other side as well. If you don't use enough solder, that won't happen. And that's exactly why I left this capacitor elevated just a little bit, so I could make doubly sure that enough solder came through the board to attach both sides. Alright, that was the hardest part, getting the filter capacitor out. The rest of it shouldn't be too big of a deal. Here's the across the line capacitor, across the AC line, of course. I don't know what this black gunk is running out of it, but it's wide open, so I'll just replace it with a 0.015 AC safety capacitor that's not supposed to ever short. And more green power cord and Incredible Hulk body coating that we have to remove here. Well, the green gunkage is coming off nicely. And to the right we have our dropping resistor and the power supply, 1K ohm. It's out of tolerance, as is the cathode bias resistor for the output tube. Not horribly out, but they can only get worse, so we might as well go ahead and replace them with film resistors, and then they should never give any problems again unless something shorts and burns them out. Now, one thing that works in getting the old stubborn solder to melt easier is to melt some nice fresh solder on it, and that'll usually heat it up enough where it'll melt without hesitation then. And then you can use your solder sucker or desoldering braid to get the solder off of there. And in cases of parts such as resistors and capacitors that only have 2 leads on them, it also helps to sometimes just take a pair of wire cutters and cut the old part off from the top side of the board, and then whenever you heat the solder connection, the old lead will often just fall out of the board. And if it's a chassis where it's not really conducive to get to the bottom side of the board, you can just cut out the old part and attach the new part to the little stubby leads that are sticking up from the top side of the board. Not the neatest thing in the world, but sometimes that's the best way to do it. Alright, we got the Motorola all fixed up, giving it a bench test before we put it back in the cabinet.
Slowest in the league. The receiver position.
There's some out-of-town station coming in. I think that's about 90 miles away, so that's not bad.
I saw that one more time during the second act.
And I'm being charitable. All of this. The show.
So we're going to let this thing play a while, and if it exhibits no problems, it's going back in the cabinet. Alright, we have it all put back together and ready to go to its recipient.
People were breaking stories on Kauai. All right, we got 4 or 5 things to get to. Thank you for coming on the show.
How this is going to play out. Again, I don't know the outcome.
H&H Auto Sales, located on Highway 19, 3 miles north of Meridian, is well known for their great selection of affordable cars, SUVs, and pickup trucks. Financing is available for everyone at H&H.
910 with its squeal, which This 910 happens to be double of the 455 kilocycle IF frequency. Might could get more if it wasn't for all the noise out here.
910 AM, the this year's coverage of Alabama Crimson Tide football and the Nick Saban's coaches
Unfolds, and then he'll...
best man, your worst man. Take the risk.
Why, Mr. Mid-Range Jumper, Mr. Efficiency, where's New Balance? I'm 50, I don't wear New Balance.
Alright, there we go. I did get rid of that old corroded power cord. The old style cheater cords are getting hard to find and expensive when you do find them, so I just installed a regular power cord, hardwired it to the chassis. So that should be okay. I don't imagine anybody's going to be pulling the back off of this and poking around in it with it plugged in. So there you go. I think it's ready to go, and I'm about ready to box it up and send it on its way.